Hey BookTube, it's Charlie from Reader Turned Writer, and today I'm just doing my wrap-up for the BookTubeAthon. I thought I'd just do similar to what I did with my TBR, where I just did a really casual vlog type video. Today's my due date, and still no baby, so yeah, we're just waiting. I feel like I've been waiting for forever. I'm kind of anxious to have the baby, but that's okay. I'm not super uncomfortable yet or anything, so it's not too bad. So I'll just get into my wrap-up. I was able to complete all of the reading challenges for BookTubeAthon. I didn't do any of the video or Instagram challenges, but I was able to read a lot, and that was really fun. I've never done a readathon like this before. So the first book that I read was the Royal Diaries, Anastasia, and this is a middle grade historical fiction about Anastasia, and I really liked it. I like Anastasia's story a lot. I grew up watching the Disney movie, or I guess it's not Disney, whoever made it that was like Disney. And really liked it. I learned a lot from this. I think it's a really well done middle grade. I definitely want to have the Royal Diaries around for, because I know it's like a series for my own girls and boys, possibly. I don't know if boys read the Royal Diaries. It's a really easy read because it's written in a diary format, and they did a really good job of making her life interesting and showing some of like her day-to-day life, I guess, and showing like her relationship with her family and different things like that, but also getting the history in there, even though she was very young when all of it was going on. So I thought it was a very well done, well-written book. And then I read Ever by Gail Carson Levine. I really like Gail Carson Levine. Ella Enchanted was my favorite book growing up, but I've only read a couple books by her, and so I wanted to start reading more by her, and so I had Ever. I don't remember when I bought it, sometime this year, and it was definitely different than I was expecting because it was more of like based off of mythology kind of thing. Like, not actually based off of mythology, but there was a lot of mythology, like made-up mythology in here. And yeah, it was a love story, and it was kind of like Hercules, only not Hercules, like made-up characters. But I really enjoyed it as well. The writing was really well done. So the first part of the book is a little bit hard to get into because there are like strange names, and it's kind of a steeper learning, like a steeper curve to get into the book for the first couple of chapters because of just the cultural difference and trying to figure out who the gods are and just different things like that, and like I said, the weird names. And reading the reviews, I saw I wasn't alone with that. I think I actually tried reading this when I was maybe in middle school, but gave up because of that. So I'm really glad that I did read it though, because I really did enjoy it. There were a few parts that were kind of slower for me in the middle, but once I got through those parts, the rest of it I just flew through, and I really enjoyed it. And the ending wasn't anything special, but I did like the ending. And then I read First Love, Last Love by Susan Evans McCloud. I really like Susan Evans McCloud, and she's kind of a one that she writes slightly shorter books, and I really enjoy her books, so I wanted to do one for this readathon because I figured I could get through it. But this was actually one of the hardest ones to get through for the readathon for me, partially because even though it was, I think it's, let me look how many pages it is. It's only like 230 pages, but the writing is actually like really small, smaller than any of the other books that I read, and so it actually was a longer book. I think it was actually the longest book that I read for the readathon. I really did enjoy the story. It was basically about, it followed a girl, what's her name? Why can't I remember her name? Amanda. It followed a girl named Amanda who was traveling west, and basically there was this guy who, when she was younger, it was like her childhood sweetheart. He promised her that he had to leave for some reason with his family, and he promised her he would come back for her and would always love her. But 7 years later, he never came back, so then she goes across the plains to marry basically a stranger that her friend, it's like a blind date, only she's going to get married to him. And that guy ends up dying, getting sick and dying, and that happens like really at the beginning of the book, so that's not like a spoiler or anything. And so from there she has to figure out what she wants to do, so she travels to California, and the love story with the guy at the beginning who promised her that he would come back for her 7 years later or whatever, that love story is going on the whole time, but then there's this other love interest, and there's like these other characters that they get involved with, and I really love the way Susan Evans McCloud does her romance novels, because they're like historical fiction that really show like what the day-to-day life was like at that time, but really makes it interesting. And I really love her writing too. I think it's really beautiful, and I love the way that she does characters. Her characters are all they have a lot of depth and character development, and so it is an LDS novel. It talks a lot about LDS culture at that time, and like the Mormons settling in Salt Lake and stuff, and has that history in there as well. And so yeah, I thought it was really good. It also had a really strong theme of like prejudice and just like the things that other people believe versus what people are actually like, and so I thought that was really good too. And then the next one I read was a Mary Higgins Clark book, Daddy's Little Girl, so it was a thriller. I don't read a ton of thrillers, but I always enjoy them when I do read them, although they're always kind of hard too, because thrillers, in their nature, the situations are just sad. And this one was definitely not what I was expecting. I did really enjoy it. Like, I was really interested throughout it all and everything. The ending wasn't like a surprise ending, which was kind of not what I was expecting either. And so it was just kind of an okay one. You know, it kept me interested like a thriller should, but it wasn't like an amazing book either. One thing I did really like about this is the main character is a journalist and a writer, and I like thrillers that are like that, like mysteries and thrillers that follow like a detective, or not a detective, a journalist or a reporter. I did newspaper in high school, and I just feel like if I were to have a job, I think a journalist would be one of the careers that I would actually really enjoy, or being a writer. And so then I read Runaway by Wendelin van Draanen, and this one was one of my favorite books that I've read this year so far. It was so good. Wendelin van Draanen wrote Flipped, if you've heard me talk about that before on my channel, because I really like that book. So I wanted to read more by her, and this was just one that I picked up, and it was so good. It was about a 12-year-old girl whose parents are dead, and she was in the foster system, and she runs away because she's basically being abused by her foster parents. And it's in a journal format because she's writing it at first for her English teacher, and then she continues to write it as she runs away and is homeless. And it follows her journey as she tries to survive on the streets and everything. And it is amazing. Like, man, it had me think about so many things that I've never really thought about, or things that I've thought about before but in a new way. And it had so many themes of just like acceptance and kindness, and I just loved it. I loved the main character. She had such a good voice, and had a really good character development throughout the book, and the ending was absolutely perfect, and this is one of my new favorite books. And then I read Walk Two Moons by Sharon Creech, and this is a middle grade book that I've heard about before, that I've been wanting to read for a while, that I just hadn't gotten around to, and it was also so beautiful. It definitely lived up to everything I've heard about it. It basically follows a girl whose mother leaves after her mother, I don't want to give away too much, but her mother leaves, and she and her father move away, and she goes on a road trip with her grandparents. And while she's on the road trip, she tells her parents a story about one of the girls, one of her friends, in the new place where they moved. And so there's kind of two storylines going on. You're hearing that story, and then you're also hearing the road trip story, and they work together so well, and the ending just made me cry. And it was, yeah, I loved the themes throughout this as well, and her character development and growth is one of the best of all the books that I read for the readathon. It was just so good. Yeah, if you haven't read Walk Two Moons and you like middle grade books or contemporaries, you should definitely read this book. The last book I actually don't own a hardcover of. I listened to it. It was my book to movie adaptation. I was going to originally do Emma by Jane Austen, because I've seen the movie for Emma, the newer movie, but I haven't actually read the book. And I do want to. I still am planning on reading it really soon. But I was going to listen to it, and it was over 14 hours, I think. And that's just more than I normally listen to books, just with my kids. It's easier for me to pick up a book and actually read it, or read it on my phone, than it is to listen to a book when my kids are awake, because then if I need to like stop or something, it's not like a big deal. Or if they're talking or watching a show or whatever they're doing, you know, hitting each other and screaming and stuff like kids do sometimes. My kids are kind of in a phase where, well, my 2-year-old's in a phase where she just can't leave other kids around her alone. She just has to like hit them or grab them, or I don't know, it's driving me crazy. But anyway, so then it makes it hard to listen to books. So I listen to books usually in the morning before they wake up, and then if I like do happen to like run errands or do something like that, then sometimes I'll listen as well, or during their naps if I'm like cooking or something, baking during their naps, which a lot of times I don't, because I usually do BookTube and reading and things during their naps, more relaxing things in the middle of the day. And so, but if I do, then I'll listen. But I usually listen half an hour to an hour a day, so I was like 14 hours is going to be really tough for me to listen. So then I was looking at my other audiobooks that I just had, and one of them was The Phantom of the Opera, which I've also never read. I watched the movie like forever ago. I don't know, when I was in like middle school, like so long ago. And of course, I love the music. You know, the music is really amazing for The Phantom of the Opera. So I decided to listen to that. It was, I think, 7 hours, so it was like half the time of Emma, which was a lot more doable for me. And so that's what I ended up doing, is I ended up listening to The Phantom of the Opera, and I just would listen to some every day. And I ended up listening to a huge chunk of it one night, because I woke up in the middle of the night with what I thought maybe I was in labor, because I was having what felt like contractions, but then I wasn't, and so it was kind of annoying. But I was up listening to my audiobook during that time. So I got a whole bunch of reading in then, and was able to finish it, and I liked it, but it was kind of, I don't know, it was kind of boring in parts to me. Maybe it just wasn't my kind of book. It's kind of like a House of Horrors type book, and they really focus on that a lot, and I was just like, whatever. I don't know. It wasn't a bad book, and it wasn't like I was like, oh, is this book ever going to end? But it was kind of boring in parts for me. And then the movie I kind of felt the same way. The best part of the movie is the music, for sure, for me at least. And yeah, I don't know that I'll ever watch the movie again, because I was kind of bored during the movie as well. Maybe because I just barely listened to the audiobook, and so the story like wasn't new for me or anything. But if you really love Phantom of the Opera, I'm sorry. I do really, really love the music still, and we listen to it on like YouTube and stuff sometimes, just with our kids, because it's obviously really good. It's a really good soundtrack or album or whatever. But yeah, so that was my BookTubeAthon, the first one I've ever done, and I was excited to finish it. I was worried I was going to have the baby, and then I just wasn't going to try and finish, because yeah, and there were actually a couple days I wasn't sure I was actually wanting to finish, because like even just like the first day I was reading the Anastasia, but I had to go grocery shopping in the morning, and then I was trying to do all my normal stuff during their naps, but then after their naps we ended up going fishing with my husband's family, but then we couldn't all fit on the boat, and so they actually took my kids, and I didn't have a fishing license anyway, so I would have just been there to help watch the kids. I wouldn't have been able to help fish. And so they took the kids and a couple people, and then the rest of us just stayed back on the beach. So I was able to get like a couple hours of reading in then and finish the book. And that's and then I was behind most of the time, except for my audiobook, because I kept up with my audiobook, and so because of that I technically wasn't behind, but I wasn't reading a book a day, because the next day I think I only finished half a book, but then I was able to read about a book a day after that and I finished listening to Phantom of the Opera on Sunday morning, and so I did finish with some time to spare. But I was going to read The Painted House by John Grisham, but it was just a longer book, and so I actually switched it out for Runaway because it was shorter. Because I was worried I wasn't going to finish, and so yeah. I definitely want to do this again next year. So yeah, did you end up doing BookTubeAthon or trying? How did it go for you? I'd love to hear about it in the comments below, and let me know if you have a wrap-up video of your BookTubeAthon experience, and I'll go check it out, as long as I don't have the baby right away. Yeah, so I guess I will talk to you guys later and see you in my next video. Bye!